UFC 209 was at the weekend, so I guess it's time we should start breaking it down. As I said in episode 1, obviously 208 was a bit of a letdown in January. There was nothing but ill feeling really coming out the back of that, especially with the title fight and how that ended and the controversy with Durand May. And so I spoke in episode 1 about how 209 really to take the bull by the horns really and kick on for the UFC. And I was really hopeful. I was really hopeful that 209 would be the perfect card for the promotion to kick on. And there were some great fights, don't get me wrong, some really great fights on the card, but overall I just don't think it quite hit the mark as a spectacle. Obviously we can't really analyse 209 and the fights that went on without talking about the fight which unfortunately did not happen, and that of course is the co-main, Khabib versus Ferguson, supposedly for the interim lightweight belt. That was called off a day before the fight, and such a shame, such a shame. First thing, Khabib's in hospital. Khabib was in hospital, and you don't want to see that. There's all the talk about the early weigh-in and the problems that the UFC are having with it. You really don't want to see guys in hospital, especially guys the calibre of Khabib. But yeah, it just really took the wind out of the sails of the promotion, losing that fight so late on, literally during the 2-hour weigh-in window. It was a big blow to the system. So, hopefully they get that fight done. And if not at 210, shortly, because you've got to feel for Tony Ferguson. I know he got paid for it, but he's trained a long time for that fight. He deserved that fight, and let's face it, this is the third time they tried to make that fight happen. 2015, 2016, and on Saturday, it's fallen through every time. Everyone wants to see that fight, and I think, to be honest, people, myself included, underrated how important that fight was to this card. I was saying the other day how this 209 card was probably was going to be up there, one of the best of the year by far. And but as soon as we lost that one, you then looked at the fight card, and although there was some good scraps on there, it kind of looked a bit mediocre, to be honest. And the main card especially kind of did fall that way. We'll look at the main card first. First up, Alistair Overeem beating Mark Hunt. It was a good win for Overeem. Really good win for Overeem. It was a brutal knockout in the end. It was a great knee. He's a great striker. Overeem is such a big guy, but they've got two big guys there. But former K1 Grand Prix winner. He's a fantastic striker, and that knee is going to take anybody out. Question now is where does Overeem go? You've got JDS and Stipe fighting for the belt in a few months' time. Is Overeem in there next in line? I'm not sure. You've Derek Lewis after his win over Travis Brown a few weeks ago. Overeem Derek Lewis would be a fight I'd be very interested in. So we'll have to have a look at that. As for Mark Hunt, he can't complain really about how it went. He broke his tibia. It's just a really bad injury. You could see during the fight blood just dripping from his leg. It looked like quite a bad break. So I mean you expect it from Mark Hunt, but the way he just went about his business despite a broken tibia it's typical of him, but it's still pretty incredible. But yeah, in terms of looking here in terms of total strikes, 59 to Overeem, 27 to Hunt, 78% to 45 in terms of effectiveness. You can't really argue with the result, Mark Hunt, and just a good win for Overeem really. Going on to the second fight on the main card, and we had the fight which shouldn't have been there really. Obviously a fight taken off the prelims because of the Khabib-Tony fight getting called off. Amanda Cooper versus Cynthia Calvillo, and very impressive from Calvillo. A minute 40 into round 1, submission win. Just really impressive. I don't know how far she can really go in that division, but obviously it's two fighters that we don't really know that much about, two up-and-coming fighters really that arguably shouldn't have been the main card, but is what it is. But yeah, Calvillo, we were told before, a few people saying before the card that she's a bit of a killer, and fair play to her. She got business done in round 1. Great submission victory. Can't say anything more about that. The third fight on the main card, and it was a bit of a sad one really. Went to decision. Daniel Kelly beating Rashad Evans. Can't argue with the result. Can't argue, although it did go split. One of the judges had Evans going 29-28. It was quite close. I guess you could say it was a close one, but you look at the stats, it's easy to see why they gave it to Kelly in the end. And like I said, it's a little bit sad. Rashad Evans is a former champion, one of the best to go at it at a time. There was a time when he was, talking about a top 5 guy in the world. He's come back after failing to make a couple of appearances. The Toronto card, he was called off by the commission. The Brooklyn card, he was called off by the commission. I believe it was the Brooklyn card, and they put him on this one. And it's not the Rashad Evans that we all loved, but that's understandable. He's getting on in age now. You can't expect him to go out forever. And Daniel Kelly just did the business, and fair play to him in that situation. Then the co-main, which got fight of the night, actually, and it was Lando Venata versus David Tamer. Unanimous decision, 30-27. Very, very good performance from David Tamer, must be said. I don't know where this will really put him in the lightweight rankings right now. I've not seen the rankings, but in that performance, that lightweight division, obviously you've got Conor at the top, then you've got Khabib and Tony, but after that there is a little bit of a drop off. No, it's quite a big drop off in fact. So a performance like that from Tamer could well put him right in that mix. Obviously in terms of the title picture, Conor has got to fight one of Khabib or Tony next, and ideally we want to see Khabib Tony next in an interim fight, or even just a title eliminator would do for me. I don't really care about the belts. They're the 3 guys in lightweights, but after that there's got to be a pecking order, and David Tamer's going to be right up there. Very good performance. A couple of takedowns in there, beat him in the striking. Just can't argue with the UD. Great stuff. Before we get to the main event, I'm just going to go on talk a bit about some of the prelims. And the early prelims actually on Fight Pass. Tyson Pedro, the Australian, went up against Paul Craig. Got the round 1 victory of the KO, and I was very impressed with Tyson Pedro actually. Very, very impressed. Because Paul Craig went in there, the Scotsman went in there 9-0. A pretty impressive fighter in his own right, and then Tyson Pedro went in and dominated really. Really dominated him. Can't fault that at all. Australian looks like he's going places, and that's the way to make an impact on the prelims of a big pay-per-view. Fair play to Tyson Pedro. I'd like to see him go further. Then on the FS1 prelims, which for me saved the entire card, to be honest. I think without these prelims, these 2 in particular, then I don't know if this would have been as bad as 208, but I think there'd have been an argument that this would have actually ended up maybe just as underwhelming as the Brooklyn card. And the 2 fights are, first up, Yuri Alcantara against Luke Sanders, and Alcantara got performance of the night because Sanders just beat on him. So, his fight management wasn't the best. He had a lot of control. Like, you look at the total strikes here, you've got Alcantara 27 total strikes in the fight. It ended in midway through round 2. Luke Sanders had 134 strikes. He attempted 182, and the vast majority of them were from on top. When he had Alcantara's back, or just when he was in side control, Sanders just beat on him for a good 7-8 minutes, and then Alcantara just out of nowhere, with that jiu-jitsu, comes out and just slides beautifully into a knee bar, and fair play to Sanders. Tapped straight away, realised that is the worst position you can possibly be in. You do not want to be messing around with knee bars. You do not want to mess around when ACLs and MCLs are in danger. You've got to prolong your career, and fair play to Sanders. He tapped out pretty much straight away. And Alcantara got performance of the night after getting beaten on for much of the fight. That was great stuff. And that looked like it was going to be the performance of the night. The real performance of the night, the highlight of the night even. And then the next prelim came on. Mirsad Bektic, the Bosnian, really highly rated Bosnian. The guy I watched the fight with was singing Bektic's praises, and quite rightly. He's had a very good start to his UFC career. Looks the real deal. Going up again, and he went up against Darren Elkins, who's a bit of a journeyman. Nothing really expected of him. In fact, with the bookies, this was the most lopsided fight of the night. Bektic, a huge favourite. Elkins, the biggest underdog of the evening. And it got to 1 minute and 41 of the round 3, the third round, and you could see why Bektic was the favourite. I mean, he absolutely beat on Darren Elkins, and his face was an absolute mess. There's blood everywhere. He looked scarred. It was pretty brutal. It was a brutal beating. And then somehow in round 3, Elkins just got this second wind. And if you saw it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I mean, just the most incredible comeback to catch Bektic and knock him out. And I mean, just the emotion on his face says it all. Some great pictures after the final bell. Just absolutely incredible from Darren Elkins, performance of the night. And I hope he gets a good decent fight next. He's not someone who's going to be a champion, but I hope he picks up a decent fight next time, gets a bit of a payday, because he deserves it. He was by far the star of 209. Prelims or not, he was the man. So, with all that said, let's talk about the main event. Now, if you listen to episode 1, you'll know that I was very excited for this one. I was very excited for the rematch between Woodley and Thompson, and two excellent fighters. Woodley, one of the best wrestlers in the UFC. Thompson, one of the best strikers. 57-0 kickboxing record. Woodley, just a sensational wrestler, as I say. So I was really excited, and the first fight at 205 was excellent. Obviously really close, ending in a majority draw, which set up the rematch. And the entire card had just been kind of building to this moment. Obviously, without Khabib Tony, this had to be the moment, and it got there, and then nothing really happened. It went the full 25 as it did the first time, and I think Ariel Helwani said this after the event, and I agreed. Like, the fight was riveting because you expected something to happen next. It seemed like it was building to something, and it just never did. But that's the reason I watched for the 25 minutes. It never really came to anything. Obviously, right at the end of the 5th round, Woodley got to put some strikes together and put Thompson down, which probably won him the fight, to be honest. But other than that, for a good 22 minutes, 23 minutes, it was a lot of just feeling each other out, and you could tell by the crowd. At no point during the UFC main event of a main card, a pay-per-view, do you want to be hearing boos? And Dana White's downplayed it, telling him to shut up, but there was even chance of fight, like something like something in a school playground, But it was just a little bit disappointing. I understand the win by any means necessary, which I mentioned in episode 1, to be fair, although I didn't think this was the way for it. I was talking about how Woodley should shoot early and use his wrestling on the ground, unlike what he did in the first fight. I didn't expect him to just kind of, just stand with him, really. Thompson just stuck to the outside a hell of a lot, trying to pick a moment. The moment never came. You've got 25 minutes. You've just got to make something happen. You really do. And just never did. And it's a shame, because it was a fight with such hype, and it was a fight that kind of needed to be big to save this card, really. And just didn't quite provide. As for the controversy over the scoring, I know a lot of people gave it to Thompson. 3 rounds to 2. I watched it back, and I can see why you do that, but I don't think there's a big issue, to be honest with you. I don't see an issue with Woodley getting the fight at all, to be honest. It was a close one for sure. Like I said, not much happened, to be honest. But for me, I think Woodley takes it. So that's UFC 209. That's that all covered. So before I go, just want to speak about some of the other news in the UFC this week. Namely, something that happened just after I recorded episode 1. One of the biggest news stories of the year so far in MMA, of course, the return of GSP, Georges St. Pierre, back in the Ultimate Fighting Championship after 3 years out, and obviously very exciting. One of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. Former welterweight champion. Fighting at middleweight though, obviously the announcer, it was a lot of speculation about who he'd fight on his return. Would he take on the winner of this fight? Would he face Woodley? Would he have a tune-up fight first? Would there be a fight with Conor McGregor? But by the sounds of it, none of those fights really came close, especially the McGregor one. And instead, he's going up to middleweight. He's going up to 185 pounds, and he will face Michael Bisping for the title in July, hopefully. No date set, but Dana White said that International Fight Week in July is the target for this fight. As far as my thoughts go, obviously very excited to see GSP back in it. Very excited to see Michael Bisping, a fellow Brit, going at it against one of the best. It should be a massive pay-per-view. Great big payday for Bisping as well, right at the back end of his career. Deserves it. I feel bad for Yoel Romero. Not gonna lie, I'm a little bit of a purist when it comes to the rankings. I don't think it's right, really, that someone can just come back and leapfrog everyone, especially with the hard work that I'll put in. Romero getting that big win over Weidman at 205. It's 205? 205. It was 205. There's a lot of hard work from Yoel Romero. Jacare Souza's in there. Luke Rockall's not too far away, and the fact he leapfrogged them all and took that fight, it's not ideal, but also you can understand why the UFC did it. At the end of the day, he was a champion. He retired as welterweight champion, never really lost his gold, so you can understand why they wanted him a title fight straight away. Plus, he's Georges St. Pierre, and that name is UFC royalty, and you can understand simply why you want him fighting for a title. As for how I think the fight will go, it's very hard to tell. Size-wise, obviously Bisping's going to have the advantage being the bigger man. Will that play a part? I don't know. I mean, GSP's so athletic, and he constantly stays in shape, so there's going to be no problems there. I can't imagine he's going to be too rusty. He's been in shape for the entire 3 years he's been out, by the sounds of things. And like I say, he's just one of the best. In terms of your all-round MMA fighter, there's been few better than GSP. Anderson Silva was an incredible striker. Johnny Hendricks is an incredible wrestler. But GSP just as an all-round fighter there's been few better. There really has been few better. You're talking John Jones, Demetrius Johnson's name will be up there, but in terms of an all-round fighter, GSP he's top 3 for me for sure. In terms of how it's going to go, it's far too early, really. I think you'd have to see. The first couple of minutes of the fight, to be honest, to see how it's going to go. But it's an exciting one, whether you agree or not. Bisping GSP, it's going to get big numbers. I'll watch it. I'm sure everyone else will watch it too. It's a great fight, and should be a good one. Thank you very much for listening.